Okay, Evan, let's get to some draft intrigue. What are you most looking forward to?
Well, there's a few things that I'm really looking forward to with this year's draft. But number one, there are 5 teams this year that have multiple picks in round one of the draft, starting with the Dolphins, who are picking at number 5, number 18, number 28. Murph's Jaguars, who are picking at 9 and 20. My Las Vegas Raiders, who are picking at 12 and 19, and the 49ers, Tom Lucino's 49ers, 13 and 31, and also the Minnesota Vikings, who are picking at 22 and 25. And to me, this is intriguing because that's 5 teams that own 11 picks in this draft. So to me, they control the board, and they could be looking to make some trades with those picks.
Excellent. So you're into the teams. I went a little more selfishly. I'm excited. We haven't had – this is the closest thing to live sports we'll have had in 5 weeks. When was the last time one of us or any of us went 5 weeks without sports? So that's what I'm looking forward to, the unpredictability of the night. It's not scripted. It's not a Netflix show. Anything can happen. I'll be saying, oh, I knew that, or I can't believe that. I didn't see that coming. Call it the wow factor or unpredictability. Whatever you're going to call it, the main reason I'm tuning in is because of that.
It's a good point, and we've all had because there is no live sports on right now. We've had plenty of time to kind of dive into the prospects and really study some of these guys that we're going to be seeing drafted on Thursday night.
This is the deepest I've been in a while.
There you go. All right, I'll start with the next topic here, Joe. Sure thing. What's one thing that you can guarantee we will see Thursday night at the draft?
Thursday night, I'm going to say Burrow. Not necessarily as a stud because I'm not sold there yet. Yes, he got better every single game at LSU and had perhaps the best college football season of anybody ever. But is it fair to say that he had the best coaching and the best talent around him? Probably. I don't think that'll be the case with the Bengals. But I do think he will be the number 1 pick. Am I right? He's going 1.
Yeah, there's no doubt. He's going 1. I don't see any scenario where he's not the first name off the board on Thursday night. For me, one thing that I can guarantee we will see this year is a trade that not only involves picks, but a player as well. The rumors are continuing to swirl about Odell Beckham Jr., although the management is continuing to deny the fact that they are shopping him, and you can be the judge on that one. Yannick Ngakoue just today is continuing his verbal assault on Jaguars management. He had the franchise tag slapped on him this earlier in the offseason, and it doesn't sound like that marriage is gonna last any further. And one other name that I want you to keep an eye on, or an ear on, I should say, is Jamal Adams of the New York Jets. His name was brought up as a possible trade chip during the trade deadline last season. They didn't make a deal happen, but I expect teams will be asking about him on draft night.
I'm with you. I got you. There'll be some moving and shaking. Now, let's stick with that and try to predict what's the big surprise. What's the bombshell? Was that your bombshell?
Well, speaking of trades, the big surprise that I'm going to predict in this year's draft is that the Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots will trade up to draft Tom Brady's successor. And I know that's not normally in the Patriots' DNA to conduct business like that. But they haven't been in the business for a quarterback in 20 years. So we may see them go with a different philosophy for this year. Currently, the quarterbacks on their roster include Brian Hoyer, who I know Browns fans are familiar with, and Jarrett Stidham, who is a second-year guy out of Auburn. I believe he played in 3 games last year. He got some mop-up time in a blowout game, and I believe he went in and threw an interception, and Belichick pulled his ass right back out and put him on the bench and put Brady back in. So to me, they got to get a quarterback, and I think they make a trade for one.
Wouldn't it be fitting, though, if former Browns quarterback Brian Hoyer takes over in New England and they go on a 4, 5, 6, 8-year run?
He's 34 years old now, so I don't know about a 8-year run, but it's possible, I suppose.
I got you. I'm with you with the trades. I don't know if I can see Belichick moving up. He's been known to move down. So I don't know if I can agree with that, but my bombshell is along those lines. I think a veteran gets moved. If you don't want to classify it as a veteran, a big name guy changes teams Thursday night. That's my bombshell.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like I said, maybe it's a Jamal Adams or a Odell, who knows? But yeah, I'm getting that sense as well. All right, I got a question for you now. Give me a name of a guy who you think is what will be well on his way to Canton and getting that gold jacket.
I love, and I don't think he'll be around for my Brownies. I got him going top 5. Gimme Simmons, Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. He's an absolute monster. He did it all for that Tigers D. I think he's coming to the league at a perfect time. I think he's big enough to play up front at the line of scrimmage and in the box, at the line to stop the run. I think he can cover tight ends and running backs well. You know who he reminds me of? I know there's a difference in size, but Troy Polamalu. I think he can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, play in different spots, and just be all over the place. Whoever ends up with him is going to be very happy, and I think us guys will be listening to him give a Hall of Fame speech down the stretch.
Yeah, I know Murph is hoping that Simmons can somehow make it down to number 9 because he would definitely be an upgrade for their defense. And that was a great comp that you gave him there with Troy Polamalu. One of the guys who currently plays in the league that a lot of analysts like to comp him with is Derwin James of the Los Angeles Chargers. But for me, I'm going to go with Chase Young, and you know, he is largely considered the top player in this year's draft, although he probably will not go, or I'm going to say he will not go number 1 overall because that'll be Joe Burrow. Listen to some of these numbers here. In 3 years at the Ohio State, the man they called Predator registered 42.5 tackles for loss, 30.5 sacks, and 10 forced fumbles. I mean, that's a game changer. Those are the type of guys that, you know, find their way to Canton. He's got a freaky combination of size and speed and athleticism. He's got great get off. He's got a variety of pass rushing moves. He's very well advanced for this stage of his career. And, you know, I do hear some criticisms out there, believe it or not, of his performance in the semifinals of the college football playoffs against Clemson. But I asked those people to go back and put that tape in again.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys we've mentioned. We'll have, you know, time will tell whether they're in Canton, but both teams who get those two will be very happy. And now we've talked about one end of the spectrum. Let's go to the other. Who's overhyped for you? Who's a guy out there that you're kind of weary of? You wouldn't put all your chips in on?
Yeah, this is a name that might not be a household name for a lot of you guys who aren't diehard draft guys, but one guy I want you to be weary of is Denzel Mims, a wide receiver out of Baylor. You can argue that no other prospect in this year's draft class has benefited or has seen his stock rise as much as Mims has throughout this process. It all started. He had a decent season with Baylor. He went over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. But really, it all started for Mims at the Reese's Senior Bowl game down in Mobile. He was a standout during the one-on-one drills. And how do I know that? Because I DVR'd every practice and I watched them all. That's how I know. And from there, he just continued to just rise and rise. He dominated at the combine. He measured in at 6'2", 207 pounds. He ran a 4.38, a 38-inch vert, and almost an 11-foot broad jump. So the measurables are off the charts. Now, my concern with this is those numbers are great. You can't argue with that. But my concern with Mims is that traditionally Baylor wide receivers have not had success in the NFL. And some of you may recall a guy by the name of Corey Coleman. Okay, I hate to bring up a sensitive subject, but the fact of the matter is that school, those guys who just do not project well to the NFL. And part of the reason is because Baylor's offense does not ask their wide receivers to run a sophisticated route tree, not to mention the defenses in the Big 12 are porous.
Yeah, I was going to say the defense has always got to be a question of any offensive player coming out of the Big 12. I jumped the gun there a little bit on you, but you held strong, gave me your Hall of Famer. Now I'm going to ask you the other end of that spectrum. Who's overhyped, Evan? Who do you got that's you'd be weary of?
That's what we just talked about.
So who was your Hall of Famer?
Hall of Famer was Chase Young.
Chase Young. I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
I talked a lot there. I got you all mixed up.
I don't need
I'm
help.
I'm talking you in circles.
You got me all mimsed up.
Mimsed up, yeah. All right, I got one for you now. Okay, we've talked about guys who we've. Oh, you know what? Actually, Joe, before I get to that, who is your player that's most hyped up?
I think it was you that had mentioned not wanting to be negative. So I don't like to do this. Like you had said, it's weird to predict someone being a bust. Some might call me a professional at it, being a Browns fan. But I'm going to go with Justin Herbert, the quarterback out of Oregon. I don't know, something about him. He's just a career backup. He's got that look to me. I keep hearing about him not being able to throw deep, and then you watch his film, and he has poor percentage, completion percentage, short and intermediate. That's not the way the league's trending. They want guys who can throw the ball downfield, make big plays. Mahomes, untraditional. In fact, that's the knock I've heard on quarterbacks lately. They only throw short and that kind of thing. There's also been some leadership questions. He's not a vocal guy. I started to think, I don't know how much to put weight on that, but you start to think, which stud quarterback in the league's not vocal? Can you name a star quarterback who you don't consider a leader? So that worries me a little bit. And I hope he ends up being the next Tom Brady. I really do. I don't root against anybody, but I'm weary of his stock.
Now, I'm going to fight you off a little bit here on this one because I'm a big Herbert fan, believe it or not. And I know we're going to get more in depth about the quarterbacks in a little bit, but I feel like I got to step in here. To me, I love Herbert. I think, again, I followed this process. I may not watch as much during the season as some of our other buddies, you included, but once the season ends, I'm all in and I'm doing a lot of research. He has checked off every box. Starting with his performance in the Rose Bowl, which ended in a championship, and I believe he was the MVP of that game as well, the offensive MVP. He was offensive player of the game at the Senior Bowl as well. He dominated there, did very well at the Senior Bowl. He's got the measurables. He's 6'6", 235. He can run. He's mobile. He's got a rocket for an arm. And not to mention, he won the 2019 William V. Campbell Trophy, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but it's the equivalent to the Heisman Trophy for academics at the collegiate level. So the brains are there. He graduated college. His 4-year cumulative average was a 4.01. Okay, now you can take the last two my last 2 semesters at college, add them together, and they won't equal a 4.01. The guy plans to go to medical school at some point in his life. So he's got the smarts that are required for the position. Yes, I've heard the personality traits. People question whether or not he's a true leader and all that. But from everything that I've read, his teammates love him, his coaches love him. So I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue too much with you on that. I hope the best. It seems like he's a great guy. If I have to pick someone who's overhyped, I'm not taking him in the top 5, maybe in the late first round. I don't want him on my team. Too many question marks. So I'm going to steer clear of him. To me, his ceiling is like a Phillip Rivers. That's the best he can ever be.
Which is pretty good. That's a Hall of Famer, borderline Hall of Famer.
But I think there's better out there.
Okay. All right. Well, I got something for you. I mentioned you being a big fan of college football. You watch a lot of regular season college football throughout the year. So you'd be a great person to ask this question for. What are some of the players or one player, in your opinion, that is worth watching on film before the draft night?
You pegged me right. I love the film. It's actually been my favorite part of the draft in the past when that player's selected and they pop up his film. I don't care how much he weighs. I don't care how big his hands are. I want to see him playing the game of football. This question's easy for me. Lloyd Cushenberry III. Don't let the name fool you. Nothing cushy about this guy.
One of the big uglies, right? At LSU.
From LSU is a physical football player. He seeks contact and plays aggressively, and I love it. He's also a real leader of that team. He was a leader of the offensive line and even carried over into the whole offense. As I said, he's fun to watch. He's always looking for contact. If you didn't watch much college football, it's worth YouTube and his highlights and putting them on. He is physical. So many times with these top offensive linemen up high in the draft, you hear, oh, athletic, long reach, but I don't know, he's not very physical. That's not the case with Lloyd.
Yeah, I think that whole entire LSU offensive line actually is a group that could be considered not overhyped, but underhyped. You have a couple guys who are going to be drafted from that. The center, whose name is slipping my mind now.
Yeah, he's the center.
Cushenberry is the center. Okay, yeah, that's right. Cushenberry's the center. And then one of their guards, Damian Lewis, is a mauler in the run game. He should be drafted in he'll be a day 2 pick, probably round 3 or 4. For me,
real quick on Cush.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys you can see fitting in and going 10 years with Pittsburgh Steelers or Green Bay or Philadelphia. He is tough. He's hard-nosed, and fans are going to be very, very happy. Now, I know you like to hole away once the season's over. You go right from playoff Super Bowl to in your cave watching film. Who's impressed you? Who's a guy that I should watch in the next couple of days before the draft?
Well, you went with a big guy, and me being a small guy, I've got a thing for little guys. You know, we got a chip on our shoulder. So for me, the guy who I've really enjoyed watching throughout this process is sticking with the wide receiver, KJ Hamler from Penn State. He's a little guy. He's a little bit bigger than me. I'm 5'7". He's 5'8". So think about that. That's small. He's 180 pounds, but he is electric. He's shifty. He can make people miss. He's like a little water bug out there. He can accelerate on a dime. I don't have his 40 time because he did not participate in the 40 at the combine, but on film, he looks extremely fast. Forget trying to corral this guy in the open field. You will not do it. Do yourself a favor. Check him out.
I will. Now, you brought up the point about guys who weren't at the combine. Were they supposed to have pro days? Is that something that the teams are missing out on?
Yeah, a lot of the pro days were canceled due to this coronavirus. There were a few teams, a few schools that got one in. I believe Oregon was one of them. Justin Herbert had some sort of pro day. What a lot of these college prospects did this year were, because their schools weren't able to host them, they kind of went on their own and found their own personal spot to do some sort of throwing session, whether it was a quarterback. I'm sure a lot of you saw what Tua Tagovailoa did when he was he's been working out at a training facility in Tennessee. So they did what they could to get some stuff on tape for these scouts to see, especially guys like Tua, who is coming off an injury and his health is a big concern.
With the scouts, do teams have enough information?
I think that's a big debate going on right now amongst general managers and scouting departments. I think a lot of teams would feel more comfortable if they were able to get these guys into their facilities, get their hands on them, look at them face to face. I think it's so much more personal when you're front and center with somebody rather than over the phone or through a Zoom conversation. I mean, there's only so much you can do during a Zoom conversation like this. How are you going to put your quarterbacks on the whiteboard? That's stuff that guys like John Gruden, he wants to get his quarterbacks on that board, and he wants to see how quickly they can process information and whatnot. So I do think that there are a lot of teams out there that wish they had more one-on-one time with these prospects. But I think at the end of the day, you've had 3 years, in some cases 4 years, to evaluate these players based on their college film, and I think that should be enough.
Yeah, it's a level playing field. There's no team that has an advantage. As a lot of these football coaches have probably said in their life, no excuses.
No. And I think it benefits the teams who maybe have a stable organization with some continuity in their front office, and I think really the it's going to show more than ever in this draft who really has an eye for talent, because that's really what it's going to come down to, because the lack of meetings and interviews and all of that. It's going to come down to who really is the best talent evaluator. So those teams could have an advantage.
You have to be near these people. What's next?
Toss up.
Toss up. Who will have the most first-round selections, the SEC or the field?
With these type of questions, I usually love the field. I like when I make my Masters bets or the Open tournament. I'm a firm believer that the field is where the money's at. I also believe power conferences deserve their own playoff bid. It's just too hard to compare conference to conference. I think I got to go with the SEC here. There's 32 first-round picks, so you need 17 to win this bet. Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina. I think it'll be close. It's a really good line at perhaps having less time, as Evan mentioned earlier. Guys are going to go with what they know and trust, and you rarely go wrong when you bet on the SEC. So I'm going with the SEC.
I'm glad you said that. I am actually going with the field on this one. In fact, I've already completed 2 mock drafts. The last one I did, however, was my 2.0 version, which was a couple weeks ago now. I know the SEC is the cream of the crop, and they will have several guys going in round 1, but in my last mock draft, I had 14 SEC players going. So I really can't see that number going much higher. As you said, I think the number would be 17, has to get over 17. And I just can't see any other way where that goes higher than that number. Speaking of mock drafts, everybody, be sure to check out my final mock draft dropping on Wednesday morning at justblogbaby.com. You don't want to miss it.
Way to get a plug in there. Next, toss up. Where is Isaiah Simmons a better fit, at linebacker or safety?
Well, Joe mentioned this is a guy that he sees as a future Hall of Famer, and I don't disagree with that whatsoever. Versatility is the name of the game for Isaiah Simmons. He did it all at Clemson. He lined up taking snaps at linebacker, slot corner, safety. Here's a good stat. I'm a stat guy, so here's a stat for you. This past season, he became the first FBS player since Khalil Mack. That's right. One of my favorite Raiders of all time, who they sadly traded away. Finished the season with 100 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and multiple interceptions. So there isn't much this guy can't do. But to me, I'd play him at linebacker. He has 4.38 speed. I believe he weighed in at the combine in the 235-pound range. That's freaky athleticism right there. He can run sideline to sideline, cover tight ends, backs out in the flats. This guy's just a football player. It really doesn't matter where you put him. He's going to be successful, but I like him as a linebacker.
I agree. I've already shared my thoughts and love for Simmons. I don't think I mentioned his intelligence, and that there may be a learning curve when he gets to the NFL, but he was the man for that, the leader of that defense. Also, what do you think about a chance, depending on where he gets drafted? Some teams might play him at safety. Some might have him on the board as a linebacker. For me, if I'm coaching the team, I want him closest to the ball. I want him closest to line of scrimmage. I want him closest to the ball. Then if it doesn't work out, you have the option to move him back. He can make plays, react on the ball, like you said. I talked up the ACC, but my top players from the ACC.
Yeah, that was part of the logic that I had there when I was thinking about where I would rather have him. Is like you said, I want him close to the ball where he can just boom, make plays, get to the ball carrier, or like I said, cover running backs in the flat. I just want him to be around the ball as much as he can. So yeah, I agree with you there.
Excellent. Toss up. Who will be the third quarterback to get drafted? Jordan Herbert or Jordan Love? Justin Herbert.
Hey, with that Jordan documentary on that yesterday, he's on the brain. I mean, hey, what are you going to do?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not even sure about the question. I mean, are we convinced Tua goes before them? Are we sure Tua's not the quarterback that drops and drops and drops? I know I've bashed Herbert. I'm willing to bet Herbert has a longer career than Tua. I've said Herbert is a career backup, so he might go for years and years. Just with the injuries, and I've mentioned it with Burrow, Tua's surrounded by Alabama. He's got the Alabama factor. He's surrounded by the best of the best, the 5 stars. Also the best coaching. I mean, he's got every built-in advantage that a Jordan Love didn't have. I mean, we know what his coaching situation was like. Here's something else. Tua's left-handed, right? Or he's right-handed but throws left-handed.
Correct.
I'm going to go to my notes for a second. Do you know who the last player was to throw a left-handed touchdown pass in the NFL?
I'm going to guess and say Matt Leinart?
Des Bryant. And the last left-hand quarterback to start?
Mark Brunell.
Kellen Moore.
Oh, wow.
I'm going with Love. Give me Love. I'm not even sure. It will be Tua ahead of them. I do think Miami takes Tua if you had to press me on it. But don't be surprised if he drops and drops and drops.
Oh, there's a lot of information there. Well, I'll start with your Tua. I don't see it, Joe. I don't see him falling out of that top 10. I mean, if he starts to drop, somebody's going to trade up and grab him. He has shown that he is now healthy. I think the hip is more of a freak accident, if you ask me. We all saw the play. I don't think it's anything to do with him being brittle. I just think it's a physical game, as he said. Injuries are part of it. I'm not worried about the injuries that he has had. He's super talented. They're comparing him to Drew Brees. I don't see any way possible he falls out of the top 10. Now, as far getting back to the main question, I think Tua will be the second quarterback taken off the board. Where? I don't know. Again, I think it's in the top 10. As far as the third quarterback, I already said I love Herbert, which this is an interesting argument here because you see him as a career backup. I see him as a franchise quarterback. I love him. I love him. And in fact, I would be all for, if he's on the board at pick 12, I would fully support the Raiders drafting him at 12. Okay?
So if the Raiders have the one pick, you want Herbert or Tua?
Oh, I'll take Tua. But Tua's not going to be there at 12.
Well, if the Raiders had the first pick in the draft?
Oh, the first pick in the draft. I want Burrow.
You want Burrow, and then you want Tua, but
Tua.
Herbert's your guy. So we have 3 franchise quarterbacks in this draft.
I believe so, yes.
Historic.
Yes. Yep.
Toss up.
Hey, you know what, guys? I got to time out. I'm just looking at my battery. I got to plug my
Oh, okay.
just let me plug in real quick. I'm sorry. I don't want my computer to crap out on me. I'm just glad
Murph, while that plugs in, just say the line so I have it somewhere on here. What was the line?
Thank you very much. All right. Toss up. Who will be the third quarterback to get drafted? Justin Herbert or Jordan Love?
Good. That way I'll have it somewhere.
Sorry about that. I looked up and I see I had 9% battery left. All right, so we're on the cornerback one. Okay.
Fulton and Terrell. How do you want to say it?
I think it's Terrell, I think.
Terrell, I think?
Yeah, I would go with Terrell.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Nobody knows. If we don't know, those idiots won't know.
Terrell. Toss up. Who's off the board first? Christian Fulton or AJ Terrell?
This one truly is a toss-up because I really like both of these corners. Early in the process, I was all in on Christian Fulton, but I've cooled on him lately, and I've heated up a little bit on Terrell. And I think that they're both going to be in play. Not to make this personal, but I think for my team at 19, the Las Vegas Raiders, both of these cornerbacks are going to be in play. It's a major need for the Raiders. But I'm going to go with Terrell because I like his combination of speed. He ran 4.46, I believe, at the combine. He's got great length, 6'1", long arms. He's a bit he's a bit longer than Fulton. Fulton's only 5'11", I believe, and he's more willing to be physical and make a tackle. And I know that's something that a lot of defensive coordinators prefer their defensive backs, be willing to come up and make tackles. So I do like that. Now, there is a lot of concern about Terrell's the last game you saw him play in, where he was torched by Jamar Chase of LSU in that national championship game. But who didn't Jamar Chase torch this year? The guy was the Blindikoff Award winner. He torched everybody. Anybody who played LSU had their worst game. So I'm not going to look too much into that. Think back to what he did in the previous national championship game, where he picked off Tua and took it to the house for a pick six. So to me, his body of work, what he's put on tape in his time at Clemson, it speaks for itself.
It's Fulton. I'm going Fulton. It's got to be Fulton. I've seen him ranked higher by most who probably know and watch more than me. I imagine he's the one that goes first. Question isn't who do I like better, because I do like Terrell. I love the way he plays and how competitive he was. He's been tough. He may not be from the defending champions, which is also ultimately why I went with Fulton. But he started 30 straight games on that Clemson D. Either one of these guys is good, but I'm going with Fulton.
Can't argue that.
Can't go wrong either way. Toss up. Do the Patriots take a quarterback in round one or not?
We've gotten to this. Does a trade count? I know old Bill likes to trade. I had written down in preparation for this, New England takes or trades for a QB. But now the closer we've gotten, I'm starting to think Belichick will zig when everybody expects him to zag. And I think by this time next week, in 1 week after the draft's all said and done, New England will have another option at quarterback besides Stidham or Hoyer. But the question to me is not in the first round. They do it much later or trade for one.
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier. I believe that the big shocker of the draft will be the Patriots taking a quarterback. And not only will they take a quarterback, I think it'll be in a trade-up fashion. Whether they let a guy like Jordan Love kind of fall to them with their late pick, I believe it's 23? Yep, I think that's correct. Whether they wait and let someone kind of fall into their lap, or if they're aggressive and they see someone like a Tua start to slip, as we mentioned earlier, or if it's Herbert who starts to slip, do they want to go up and get one of those guys? But I do think it'll happen, and they're going to make it happen this year.
In the first round?
First round. Yeah. It's just because I don't see there isn't a lot of the guys who are, your day two quarterbacks are more developmental. Jacob Eason out of Washington, he's got all the physical tools you look for, but, he's just still considered a developmental guy. Jake Fromm out of Georgia. The guy has been, he's got great leadership. He's been started a lot of big games at Georgia, but there's questions about his arm strength. So Jalen Hurts is another name. I like him personally. He's got that dual threat ability that we're seeing a lot more these days with NFL quarterbacks. But I just think that the Patriots have a big need at quarterback, and they know how important the quarterback position is, having Tom Brady for the past 20 years. They're going to go and get one.
So let's play out that scenario of them waiting for Love or hoping, or maybe he will drop to the Patriots. Is that our fourth franchise quarterback of the draft?
I don't necessarily believe Love is a franchise quarterback. That's I don't know how the Patriots feel about him, but I think if he's there, they're going to take him. I don't see how they could pass on him if he's not. I'm not the biggest Love fan. I know there's a lot of comparisons out there with Patrick Mahomes and his kind of gunslinger way of playing, but I do have some questions. I know the coaching staff was a big problem this season. I know he lost there was a lot of turnover on the roster from the previous season, but I just see such a big difference in those stat lines from the previous years, and so that I do have some questions about that.
Going undefeated. Next.
Over under. Tackles selected in the first round, 4.5.
That's going to be an over for me. I could see maybe 5 or 6 tackles going in round 1. This position in this year's class is real top heavy. There's 7 real good tackles that you can get in this draft. And I think after that, it really talent kind of falls off a cliff. So I think teams who are in the market for a tackle, they know this, they see this, and they're going to want to make sure that they get their guy in round 1.
Yeah, I can't argue with much of what you said, even though I'd like to. You look at the history of the draft, and the top spots seem to come from the same 3 positions. You need a quarterback, you need a defensive end, you need an offensive tackle. That's what's important.
You got to have a quarterback, you got to be able to protect the quarterback, and you got to be able to get after the quarterback. Those are the 3 premium positions in the NFL, and those are why those positions generally go like crazy in the top 10.
Yeah, so you start focusing on the tackles. Which one has the longest reach? That always seems to be important.
Oh, geez, I don't have that figure off the top of my head. I could pull it up for you if you want to give me a second, but we'll move on to the next question, and I can look that up while we're discussing.
Well, yeah. So ultimately, I'm going to go over 2.
Okay.
I know that you said there's a lot of good ones early. There's also a lot of teams that need them. Including my Brownies could use some help there. So between the talent level and the need, I got to go over here too. More than 4.5 tackles will be selected in this first round.
All right. So we've alluded to movement in the draft. For our next over-under, round 1 trades, 5.5.
5.5. I'm going over. I feel there will be at least one big trade. I've already said that. We've already started to hear about OBJ and Leonard Fournette, and where there's smoke, there's fire. So it might not be those guys, but GMs are leaking, and people are starting to talk. And if one goes, then there's the domino effect. And I think we could see teams not even slated to draft in the first round. The Colts all of a sudden pop in there, and teams like that. And so I know there's a different setup, and technology seems to be getting brought up, but I don't think it's going to hamper anything. And I'm going over here too.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back. You asked me about length of arms, tackles that have the longest arms. This year's draft class, I'm looking at my handy draft guide here that I have. The longest arms go to Andrew Thomas out of Georgia, who is one of those first-round guys projected to go probably top 15. So he has 36 and 1/8 arms. That's long. So for me, the over/under on round 1 trades, I'm also going to say that's an over. And I tell you why. There's a growing sense. My sources tell me that because of the coronavirus and the impact that it's had on this whole entire process, is that teams have not had the chance, and we talked about this, to get their hands on these prospects. They haven't had a chance to get them into their facilities and get their team doctors to look over those medicals. And they didn't have a chance to, interview as much as, like I said, I talked about one-on-one, face-to-face. They didn't have that opportunity. And because of that, more teams are going to be willing to trade out of those round 1 spots, looking to acquire picks for next year. Or maybe even later in the draft, but more importantly, next year, where they'll have the time to get those interviews done, to evaluate the medicals, and to do all those things that they were not able to do this year. That's the buzz I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. They want to feel more comfortable. They want to be more secure. It's counter to the talk of, with technology, they're not going to want to call around as much, and they're going to be pressed for time and glitches. It's an interesting take.
Yep, they're almost like opting out of this year's first round in hopes that they can just push it off to next year.
Do a lot of these GMs have that flexibility? I mean, are there jobs that are stable?
That's a good question. I'd have to. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of if there's any new GMs in the league. I assume a new GM would have a little bit more flexibility. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'd have to look at
one GM's trading it, then someone ultimately is making that pick.
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
Someone's going to be held accountable, but
yeah. Well, again, there may be teams who just have the guy that they love. And every team has a guy they want, and maybe they'll be willing to go up and get him, so we'll see.
We will.
One of the best people to ask would be Kevin Costner.
Yes.
All right. Next, over under quarterbacks taken in the first round.
It's all about the quarterbacks, isn't it? It's always about the quarterbacks, and that's what attracted me to that position. I just wanted it to be all about me.
How many more quarterback questions?
Not enough. For me, I think the number is 4. That's the number. So I guess you can call that a push. I think we talked about Burrow will be the top pick. I do see Tua. I'm not going to tell you who I think Tua will go to, because we do have our little competition coming up, and I don't want to give it too much of my insight. I've already given you guys enough as it is, but I think Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Love. You could make an argument. I mentioned Jacob Eason. I think those are guys that you could bet on going in round 1. So I'm going to say the number is 4. It's going to be a push.
What do you think of that, Murph? Is that allowed?
Well, normally I'd make you make a concrete pick, but since
okay.
you are one.
Well, I can do that. I can do that. So if I got to make a concrete pick, I am going with the under. And if I had to pick one quarterback out of those 4 that falls out of round 1, it would be Jordan Love.
That's the least you could do after you couldn't make a selection.
Thank you.
I've tried to take the easy way out.
I've kind of given my thoughts on the quarterback. Well, we're kind of on opposite sides, Evan. I think there's a question mark or major area of concern with all of them. I know you feel that these are legit franchise quarterbacks. I think we agree that there's at least 2 going in the top 5 or 6. I think a lot of teams can't resist that chance to change a franchise with that quarterback. It's just too alluring for teams. I think it's probably closer to going over. I'm hoping for Jalen to get selected. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm hoping, rooting for him. I'm going to say push. I think it'll be exactly 4.
Oh, geez.
Unbelievable. Hey, speaking of quarterbacks, you got me thinking here. You are not a big believer in Herbert, and I'm not as big of a believer in Jordan Love as you are. So how about we make a little wager here? In fact, I got this because I saw Todd McShay and Mel Kiper also having this same debate. I can't remember which one is a believer in Herbert and vice versa, but they have a small bet going. Theirs is to a charity, but if you'd like to make a wager, I will bet that Herbert goes off the board before Love, if you want to make that bet.
Now I'm willing to bet the Pope's Catholic.
Yeah, I just can't put the stock in that one. I'm not confident in that. I don't know where these guys are drafted. I don't know where the draft minds are at like you. I'm willing to go with NFL career, though, or something that involves the NFL longevity or playoff wins or something like that.
I'm looking for instant gratification.
I can't commit to that.
Quarterbacks do.
Joe has always been a very non-committal type of guy.
I'm married.
Except for that one time.
I can't argue with that either.
All right, gentlemen. Just when we thought we couldn't get away from the me, the quarterbacks of the group, we go to the bigger divas. Over under. Wide receivers selected in the first round. 6.
Oh, this is supposed to be a really deep group, right? The receivers this year? Best
Correct.
we've had in a while?
Correct.
It seems like a very high number to me. Those 6 taken, wideouts drafted in the first round. I started thinking, wow. So I did a little research. Let me go to the notes. Do you know or happen to know how many receivers were taken last year in the first round?
Let me see real quick. Was it 5?
It was 2.
2.
Yeah.
I can. Debo Samuel was 1. No, he was second round.
Second round. Am I right on this, Murph?
What's up?
Marquise Brown,
Oh, right. Yep.
Correct?
and N'Keal Henry.
Harry.
Yeah. End of the
Harry.
draft.
Yeah.
And so I started going back further. I said, I got to go back 10 years.
Wow, that's a good idea.
2015 is the only time in the last 10 years where 6 were taken. That still wouldn't win. It'd be a push.
So 15, that was Amari Cooper. And who else?
I don't have the name.
No, that was Cooper, though, I believe.
2015. But I kept going back to find a situation where an over would have hit 7 guys. 09, big draft class. No. 88, a lot of talented receivers. 01, all of those had 6. That's the most I could find. I'm under here. I love Lamb. I love Jerry Jeudy. They're studs, but the number's too high for me. Under. You know who I think will be the best receiver associated with this draft when all's said and done? Diggs.
Diggs?
Diggs. He was traded for a draft pick, right?
Oh, okay. You had me confused there. Oh, right. Stephon Diggs.
He'll be the
Buffalo.
best when all's said and done. He's worth it.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. I wish I could disagree with you here, but I can't. My reasoning is a little bit different than yours. You went back and looked at past drafts. You went on trends. I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective. I think that because it is such a deep class, they say it's the deepest we've seen in 20 years, in fact. I think that because of that, teams are going to look to say, you know what? We can address that need on day 2. We can address that need in round 3 because you're going to have guys that normally in most draft classes, you may have your top 5 guys in this year's class who many say are Jeudy, Lamb, Henry Ruggs out of Alabama. And then, the 4 and 5 and 6 spots, I guess it varies. Justin Jefferson out of LSU, Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. A lot of people like. I mentioned Denzel Mims. I've seen him creeping into the top 7. So it varies. That's pretty subjective there. But
is Higgins going to be a second-round guy?
Oh, T. Higgins, yeah. I see him as he could sneak into round 1. But again, I think a lot of these teams are going to say, listen, we can get a receiver that I've got a round 1 grade on in round 2. Or a guy that I've got a round 2 grade on in round 3. You got to remember, because it's so deep, they're all going to get pushed back because you can only take so many, right? So I think because of that, teams are going to take advantage of the depth in the class.
Yeah, I can see that happening as well. I agree there. I do wonder if 1 goes and then 2 goes, if it's a trickle down and they start.
Yeah, there could be a run.
I don't know. We'll see.
That's a good point because teams might get nervous. They see 1 or 2 go, and then they say, "Oh, I gotta get one." That could happen as well. Put a little pressure.
Very nice, very nice. So now we transition over to the ground game. Over under running backs that go in the first round. We got this listed as 0.5.
Yeah, this was I went with Joe's philosophy here on this one. I went back and looked. I only went back 1 year, which I knew the answer to, but I just wanted to make sure I was 100% correct. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say there will be 1 running back drafted in this year's first round, just like there was only 1 running back drafted in the first round last year, which was Josh Jacobs, who's a damn good running back, if you ask me. So yeah, I don't see this year's draft class as far as the running back concerned is very good. It's deep. There isn't a lot of high end talent. There's really only maybe 1 or 2 guys who are worthy of a first round selection. So I see a lot of these guys going in rounds 2, 3, and 4. But as far as first round goes, I'm going to say 1 running back goes in first round.
How about running the ball, Pizzulo? Petrus, what do you think? I can tell you what, if it's me or John Pizzulo drafting, we're going with over. I love this class. They're not getting enough love, in my opinion. I think it's a very talented group with a lot of potential. I know that the shelf life in the NFL for a running back is very short, but you mentioned Jacobs. You got a guy like McCaffrey. These guys are worth it. I mean, right? Jacobs has been worth that pick, right?
Yeah, it's one thing I forgot to mention. Again, being a Raiders fan, having a guy like Jacobs in that offense totally transformed. I know the Raiders didn't have one of the best offense in the leagues, but their offense was much better with Jacobs. So these guys the running backs really do make a huge difference. There's no denying that, but teams just don't value running backs high in the draft anymore. They feel that they can get a sufficient runner later in the draft who isn't going to cost them as much money. That's really what it comes down to. It's a money thing.
Well, you better have a pretty good offensive line if you're going to do that rotating the running backs thing and running back by committee, in my opinion. This year,
true.
Dobbins, Swift, Akers, Taylor, Edwards-Helaire, these guys are running backs that all three of us will be drafting in fantasy drafts very, very soon. They can do a lot. They can block. They can catch. They obviously can run with the ball. I don't know if NFL GMs will go over and it'll hit the one in the first round, but I'm going over.
Is there one in particular that you really like?
I like them all for different reasons. How about Edwards-Helaire down the stretch against really good competition?
Yeah.
I like Dobbins. He's durable. He's going to be one of these guys I think that runs for years, exceeds that shelf life. Swift can do a lot of different things. I like him.
Yeah. I agree.
Going undefeated. Next.
All right. What's the word, gentlemen? Chase Young's impact on the league will be?
To me, it'll be intriguing to see. Intriguing's the word. I'm fascinated to see how he translates and how he can make it, how and if he can make an impact. As a Browns fan, I can say Myles Garrett, the same position, has impacted the games I've watched. I don't know if you can say he's impacted the league, but when I watch games that he plays in, he impacts them. He's an impact. Now, obviously, after what went on towards the end of his season, he did impact the league just in other ways. But Evan, Young is interesting to me because he's a star. You mentioned him dominating 2/3 of the season. He just dominated. Then he had the trouble, the suspended, and the questions when he came back in the playoff, which I know you've mentioned. I kind of go back and forth on him throughout the college football season and now the draft. I'm like in this in-between area on him, so I'm going with intriguing. I want to see what he does.
I say immediate. And I think that he's going to come into the league right away, and he's going to make his presence felt, much like one of his former college teammates, Nick Bosa, did last year for the 49ers. I think you saw the difference that he made for that defense. I mean, don't forget, that 49ers team picked, I believe it was in the top 7 or 8 last year? Top 10, I know that. They were 3 or 4 wins last year. They went from that to the Super Bowl, and a big part of that was because of the defense, and a big part of that defense was Nick Bosa. So I expect a similar type of impact from Chase Young, early in his career. And I think like I said, I mentioned, he's got all the tools. I think he's NFL ready, and I expect to see a lot of big things from him early and often.
He'll be getting after the quarterback.
Absolutely. And I think most mock drafts have him going number 2 overall to the Redskins, who have a pretty good stout defensive line already. They drafted Montez Sweat in the first round last year. They've got a couple other former first round picks with the names are slipping my mind, but one of the defensive tackles from Alabama. And so they got a pretty stout line there, and I think he's going to really add to that if he goes there.
Now, just thinking about, he goes to the Washington. Who are some of the quarterbacks and offensive line he's going to be getting after? The Giants' offensive line wasn't impressive, right?
Terrible offensive line. In fact, they better get themselves a tackle in the draft if they want to protect their young second-year quarterback, Daniel Jones.
And what about Philly?
Philly's O-line situation, I believe Jason Peters, who is their longtime veteran left tackle, I believe he's retiring, or he was a free agent at least. I'm not sure if they brought him back. I'd have to do a little bit more research on that. I know Dallas's offensive line, they're losing their center to retirement this year. They've traditionally had one of the better offensive lines in the league, but I don't think it's at the same level as it was a few years ago.
Agreed. All right, going from impact into the kitchen. The criticism of Mekhi Becton's love for cooking and eating is?
Dumb. Of course he likes to eat. You don't get to be 364 pounds and not like food. Would you rather have some bird belly protecting your quarterback's blind side? I mean, what isn't being talked about enough about this guy is his movement skills at 364 pounds. Did anybody watch the combine? Did this GM watch the combine? The guy ran a 5.10 in the 40 at 364 pounds. Besides, has anyone ever heard of the name Trent Brown? He's the highest paid tackle in the NFL. Okay, 6'8", 360 pounds, and he's a very good comp for Becton. So to me, this is just GMs getting bored, okay, and they're going crazy. They've watched so much film, and they're just looking for little bits to put out there in the media. It's time to get this draft going because these GMs, they're making some dumb comments.
Yeah, I tell you what it is. It's predictable. Every year we get some story like this. It's linked from a scout or a GM, and of course it's anonymous. They don't want to put their name next to it. It's also predictable because of the position he plays. He's an offensive lineman, therefore he likes to cook and eat. He's probably fat and lazy too, right? No, it's foolish as well. Who doesn't like to cook and eat? Which one of us doesn't like to cook? We're talking about smoking this. And
I got a few friends who like to eat. I know that.
Yeah, and we like to cook. If it was a quarterback, we talked about how cultured he was. He's in the kitchen. He's looking up recipes. He's so cultured. You got to draft him. Becton may end up being lazy and not panning out. It's true. But he also may end up getting his fill on Sundays. And I hope he eats up whatever GM's team that had this stupid anonymous statement. That's what I hope.
Yeah. I mean, listen, go ahead. You said it all. That was I can't even.
Well, dumb's a good word for it.
Yeah, dumb is. And what I was going to say was, I think that again you can't believe anything you hear 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the draft. It's all smoke screens. It's probably the same GM that said that dumb comment is the guy that probably has Becton, the number 1 offensive tackle, on his board. He's just trying to make all these other teams out there think, oh, he's lazy. He's not gonna control his weight. Meanwhile, he just wants him. So that's what these guys do. They're just trying to set traps and make smoke screens. That's just how it works. It's smoke screen season. It's underway.
So before we get too far, the Browns will have that 10th pick, and they need a tackle. Is this guy around for them?
Yeah, I mean, all these different analysts and everyone's got these guys ranked differently. Early in my mock drafts, I had Becton as my top tackle off the board. In my latest mock draft, which will be dropping on Wednesday, justblogbaby.com, I'm gonna have Willis out of Alabama being my first tackle off the board. I think Becton could make it down to the Browns at 10, to be honest with you. Yes, I do.
We'll see what he's cooking when he's playing on Sundays for the
In fact, maybe it was DePesta. What's his name? DePosta?
Yeah.
Maybe it was him that made that comment. You never know. He's looking, setting traps.
All right, gentlemen, we're embarking on a draft like no other. I need to know, this year's NFL draft production will be?
The word here, Murph, is historic. We'll be talking about this draft in particular for years to come. I think it'll end up being one of the most watched, if not the most watched ever draft. People are craving it. It's going to be shown on multiple channels. I see ABC, and then I think ESPN and the NFL Network are doing like a combo thing. I love it because we got the college football crew doing one of the stations, and then obviously the NFL guys, Trey Wingo, Kuipers and McShay are in there. Honestly, it's a big decision for me. Which channel and others? Which channel do I watch? Do I flip back and forth? How about this? I might set up a second TV. Come
on now, that's the way. I can't believe you even asked that question. I thought
some drafts. Here I am talking about setting up two TVs. This is huge. But one more thing, we need more. We need more guys mic'd up. I want them to put a camera in not every fan, but every team gets a fan that has a camera in his house, so we see the fans' reaction of every team when it's drafted. And I need meetings filmed leading up. I need these war room meetings filmed. Don't release it this year. In 10, 20 years, let's see it. Tiger King, The Last Dance. I need to see this stuff. I need more of it now. I've overload.
That's, you know what, that's a good point you say there about historical, because especially because of what we're going through. I mean, we're going through a time in our certainly our lives. We've never seen anything like this. In 50 to 100 years from now, they're going to look back on this, and this is going to be something in the history books. So you nailed it on the nose there. For me, I said different. For me, the draft is right up there. It's like Christmas morning for me. When you talk about my favorite sporting events, NCAA tournament, which sadly was taken from us this year. The Super Bowl, of course, week 1 NFL. There's so many, but Masters week, I love that as well. But for me, the draft is definitely in my top 3. And for me, I kind of have this feeling of I'm excited, but part of me, I feel like something's missing, especially because it was supposed to take place out in Las Vegas this year. And I felt like, being the Raiders, being the, Las Vegas Raiders, and they were really going to kind of welcome the market to the fans and just kind of, welcome everybody to football in Las Vegas. So I'm kind of upset about that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of glitches and there could be some delays with the format being on the virtual side of things. It's definitely going to have a different atmosphere this year. And I think in recent years, especially where they travel to different cities, Philly or Dallas or Nashville, I mean, you see hundreds of thousands of people lining up in the streets to watch this. And I think we're going to miss that atmosphere of the booing, the booing of the commissioner when he comes out. I mean, we're going to miss out on those things. And to me, that's what makes the draft special. You're not going to have the glitz and the glam with the red carpet, with the players with their suits and their jewelry and all that. Personally, I'm going to miss that kind of stuff. That's not for everybody. I get it. But the pictures, the scenes of guys in the green room. And we still see images of Aaron Rodgers sitting in the green room, waiting to hear his name picked. We're not going to have that this year. I mean, I'm sure they'll have some sort of footage of players at their homes and whatnot. But for me, it's going to be different. I'm going to be excited, but it's just going to lack a little bit of something for me.
Yeah, I do think I am interested to see how they cover it, as far as you mentioned, cameras in players' homes and how many people are grouped in at the set even. I'm very interested to see what the production of it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really heard any information as to how they're going to do it, other than I believe they released a list of, I want to say it was in the 55 or 56 prospects who I assume they will have some sort of coverage at their home or something. They released a list. You can find it on the internet.
And I saw a report that Goodell is still going to be booed.
I did hear that he's making the picks from his basement, from his home in Westchester County, New York. And I do believe that I heard there's a group of fans who are trying to have people gather at his home and boo him at the beginning of the draft. So maybe that's one thing we won't miss out on, is hearing Goodell booed at the beginning of the draft.
Let's put on the glasses. Let's do the happies.
So to close, on this date, we'd like to go over a few anniversaries. Happy anniversary. 1916, the Chicago Cubs played their first game at Wrigley Field today.
Didn't know that.
1939, happy anniversary, Mr. Ted Williams. You recorded your first hit today against Yankees pitcher Red Ruffin. Not to be confused with Rad Radford. This day, today, 1986, what a year. Michael Jordan sets a playoff high, scoring 63 points against the Boston Celtics, a feat that hasn't been beaten in the playoffs.
And it won't.
And finally, 2002, happy anniversary, David Carr, not Derek Carr, because today, back in 2002, you were the first and inaugural pick of the Houston Texans. And, of course, happy anniversary to those celebrating 420. Just to go way, way back for you history buffs, happy anniversary. The year is 1611. William Shakespeare's Macbeth saw its first screenplay? Thank you.
That's impressive.
Let's not leave out birthdays. Today, 420, I'd like to wish a happy birthday to the 1966 Heisman Trophy winner. Steve Spurrier turned 75 today.
The old ball coach.
Yes.
Nice.
A happy 59th birthday to Donnie Baseball.
Mm.
Not only the first baseman for the New York Yankees, but he holds a special image in the place of Dan Lucino's bathrooms, basements, or wherever. Happy birthday, Carmen Electra. You turned 48 today. And I'm sure we'll get a good glimpse of you this upcoming Sunday on The Last Dance when we go over Dennis Rodman, the Worm.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave this man out because, unfortunately, in 2005, he did pass. But happy birthday, Luther Vandross. You would have been 54 today. Rest in peace, big fella. And then we're on to Happy Trails. All right. Happy Trails. This one hits a little home for me. Happy Trails to the predictability of the Jacksonville Jaguars. What are we doing? I don't know. Obviously, we're a long shot from where we were when I went out and purchased a Jalen Ramsey jersey. Gone. Huh. Yannick Ngakoue, supposed to be a staple. The only guy I think in New York with one of these. Huh. Come the draft, could be gone. This guy, come on, he's like cement. He's supposed to be the Tim Duncan of Duval. And now I'm hearing this, he's going to be gone. What am I doing? What am I doing? So David Caldwell, Doug Marrone, you're full of baloney. How do you want me to go about this year? It's bad enough I got to go through winter. Now you're doing this to me? Happy trails. But happy trails to all those LeBron James is the GOAT of the world in the NBA world. You got to see it. This younger generation got to see a glimpse, because it's only been 2 episodes, a glimpse of what the true GOAT, Michael Jordan, was, is, and forever will be to the game of NBA basketball, let alone the world. Happy trails. And I didn't want to leave out a special early birthday wish to our co-host, Joe Vogt, tomorrow. The old boy will be turning 34. Happy birthday, sir.
We're going to do it up big, too. We'll probably, I don't know, stay in and, I don't know, cook dinner and not go anywhere.
Have a couple beers and then fall asleep.
Trivia. Draft trivia.
That's right. I forgot.
Yep. Draft trivia. Looking forward to it. Errors, fellas, tonight you ran a very clean show. Very impressed. I wanted to get nitpicky with you. I mean, Evan, KJ Hamler, perfect. You went with 180. He's 176 pounds. Come on, man.
I rounded up. I like to round up for the little guys. We round up. We always round
4
up.
4 pounds matter. You're right. Fellas, the 2015 wide receiver draft class. Evan was right. Coop started it off with the Raiders, followed by Kevin White to the Bears.
That's right.
Devontae Parker to Miami. Nelson Aguilar, Philly. Rashawn Perryman to the Ravens. And Philip Dorsett rounded it off for the Colts that year. 6 in 2015.
Wow.
And last, just plugging in, I believe you were looking for that Redskins defensive lineman, Jonathan Allen from Alabama.
Allen, yes.
But yes, ferocious line indeed if they can string it all together and they end up with Chase Young.
Definitely. And they brought in that defensive-minded coach there in Ron Rivera.
Yeah, he'll have a lot of fun working with that group. All right.
Okay, we'll get you out of here on this. What's everyone's favorite draft memory?
Murph, you want to go first or you want me to step in here?
I can go first. I can be quick. One of my favorite draft memories was not too long ago. It was our 2016 class that featured Jalen Ramsey. And then Miles Jack, who was supposed to be one of our – we were going Ramsey, Miles Jack. We didn't know what we were going to do, who was going to fall to us. Turns out Miles Jack takes a fall and a half, and we end up with him in the second round. And then I can remember talking to Evan about this guy. He told me he was going to be good in the third round when we drafted Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah.
And you told me, you're like, this guy's going to be something. And lo and behold, he is.
Yeah, he was definitely on my radar that year. Definitely. I remember watching him. Maryland, out of Maryland, yep.
Yep. And just seeing those guys in the draft class, it was a lot of fun.
Well, all right, for me, I think you guys know where I'm going to go with this. Unfortunately, this is not a good memory. At the time, it was a good memory, but looking back on it, it did not turn out well. 2007, I'm in my super senior year at Cortland, and the Raiders have the number 1 pick in the draft. I am at the dark horse with my Jamaican roommate, Zizwe. And we're watching the draft together, having a good time, drinking and eating. Of course, I had high hopes. Al Davis, if you recall, was still alive at this point, and he was calling all the shots, which wasn't always a good thing for the Raiders. And in true Al Davis fashion, he selected Jamarcus Russell, who, if you recall, had a pretty good junior year for LSU. I believe he played well in the bowl game and really kind of came on strong during this draft process. I believe there's a clip of him throwing the football like 80 yards or something from his knees. And that's the type of stuff that Al Davis just drooled over. Guys that could run fast, or guys that were, had really big arms, or could throw the ball real far, stuff like that. Real dumb stuff, And obviously they made him the first overall pick in the draft. And I remember at the time actually being happy about it, because I was young and naive, and I didn't know what I know now, and I was excited at the time, and we all know how that worked out. Russell goes down as arguably the biggest draft bust in the history. I can't think of a bigger one than him, really. He wasn't in the league very long. And just for some reference on that first round there, that top 10, okay? Now, I know the Raiders had the first pick, so they could have had anybody they want. But one pick later, Kelvin Johnson went off the board, future Hall of Famer. Pick number 3, Joe Thomas. I know you guys are familiar with him, another future Hall of Famer. And at pick 7, a guy by the name of Adrian Peterson went off the board. So you have 3 future Hall of Famers right there in the top 10 that went off the board. So, and I do know that Darrelle Revis went, I believe, pick 14 in that draft. So you had 4 future Hall of Famers go in the top 15 of that draft, and Al Davis went with Jamarcus Russell. So it still bothers me to this day. I still believe that's, what put the organization back several years, and they're still trying to dig themselves out of that hole from that pick.
Wow. As a Browns fan, there's a lot of draft memories. It's just a question of whether
I'm preaching to the choir over here.
Of course, I do love that clip of Mel Kiper ripping the Colts for not taking Trent Dilfer, and then getting called out by the GM.
Who's Mel Kiper, anyways?
Mel man knows more than him, and he doesn't even a season ticket holder. It's just, to me, that is NFL draft entertainment at its highest. But my own personal favorite draft memory comes from a time, and I wasn't even watching the draft. I was working a Ithaca College softball playoff game in late April. And it was 2007, that same draft, Evan. And the Browns take Joe Thomas, and then they trade down to get Brady Quinn. And we got our quarterback, and we got our tackle. And now I know Quinn doesn't end up panning out, but Thomas is one of arguably the greatest Browns of all time, in my opinion. And my phone is blowing up from Browns fans who are happy, and they're excited, and they have hope. And to me, that is what the draft is about. It's hope. We can change things tonight. There is life. There is hope. And so once again, I'll be tuning in 2020, and I hope the Browns do right.
Very well said.
Agreed.
PTI.